All right, welcome back to Snap Publishing, where we discuss the secrets of Edward Leeds Scanlon's Coral Castle and the connection of that to the periodic table and to the zodiac and to the DNA double helix. All right, welcome back. So today I'm going to do a mishmash of why I got into this. What gets me out of bed in the morning since I retired from climbing poles and putting the power on. And I call it poking the devil right in the, begins with the letter F, right in the eye. And this is to anybody out there who's hit a certain age and started saying, okay, I got to start getting to the point where I got to do things I came here to do. I remember years ago hearing Bruce Springsteen talk about when he left the big scene. And they asked him, hey, why are you playing these obscure clubs? And Robbie Krieger from The Doors was doing the same exact thing. And they're like, hey, can you play Born in the USA? Nope. They were playing songs that they wanted to play on an acoustic guitar with a harmonica. That's it. And people were furious. And they played wherever they wanted to. And I remember the words of Bruce Springsteen. And he said, it was time to become the man that I wanted to be. And I was stunned. I was like, man, there's a lot of layers to this onion. When Bruce Springsteen says he has something else that he needs to get done, that ought to tell you that, man, I'm just sucking hind titty here. I got to step up my game. So this is what I'm talking about. Poking the devil right in the eye and doing it with what God gave you and quit playing victim, right? A guy like Billy Waugh, read Hunting the Jackal. Great book. He's the first guy to lay eyes on bin Laden and warn everybody about bin Laden. Nobody listened. And they burned and shredded all his work when the planes hit the World Trade Center. Nobody wanted anyone to know. Billy Waugh was on top of that and warned everybody. So they burned all his reports that he had sent in. But Billy Waugh, dying on a field in Vietnam, looking at the sky, said, God, give me one chance to get out of this. And he was destroyed. Read the book. And he wanted one more chance to inflict maximum damage on the enemy. And that is what I read that book and I said, man, what a high-level thinker. Not thinking about, oh, pity me, I might lose my legs, my guts are burst open, we're surrounded by the enemy, nobody wants to come and get us. Nope. He said, God, get me out of this so I can inflict maximum damage on my enemies. Think about that. So I said to myself, you know, what can I do at my level? And you don't want to wear Saul's armor. We discussed this in an earlier video. You want your sling and stone. Very simple implements David walked off with. He had to put the king's armor aside and do what he knew, what he felt comfortable with. Okay? Trying to do things other people's ways wasn't working for me. So that's why we're here. Okay? And a lot of those people, like I say, when you leave them, they attack you. So you think, oh, the church is my buddy. The church ain't your buddy. This is why I talk about you're between God and the devil. You think, oh, I'm a member of the church. I'm a Christian or a Jew or Muslim or whoever, Hindu. Those people aren't your buddies. When you leave and say anything contrary to what they teach, you will find out very quickly they jump on your chest with both feet. So I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but all these Satanists that think, oh man, I'm a Satanist, man, I'm among my own, or devil signs. No, it's the same thing, except over here on the left instead of over here on the right. But that's part of taking off Saul's armor. You're like, you know, I'm getting the ick and I don't like the Christian that I've become. You got to be like Bruce Springsteen and set out on your path that you came here God put a message in you. You are that message, that DNA that you contain. That's your message. Life through the prism of your experience is what you're supposed to be doing. Listen to Bruce Springsteen. So I had to start setting goals. Now you read about Gideon. The war cry for Gideon was sword of the Lord and of Gideon. It's a combination of you and God. DNA. The ladder. The two sugar phosphate backbones connected with the hydrogen line down the middle. Yes. All of it. And if you look at the word goals, that's Gideon, of, and Lord, sword. So if you take goals and you rearrange it, you get sword, of, Lord, and Gideon. SOLAG. When you put it in those terms. So, coming from, I was poor middle class. I wasn't rich middle class. Even though those guys in South Boston calling me Lace Curtain Irish, they probably had it better than me by a factor of 10. But I knew I don't have Donald Trump's money and influence and his height, his stature, his magnetism, whether you like him or not. And then today, he's elevated his children's status tenfold, probably more, than he had when he was given his money by his father. Him and his brother were given an equal portion. His brother, you read the book. It was a great book. But he had to make himself like I have to make myself. Everybody has it hard at their level. I quit feeling sorry for myself saying, oh, look at these rich kids. They got it made. No, they don't. Their problems are exponentially larger than yours. So you have to quit making excuses for not getting shit done in life. Pardon my French. You got to be that Bruce Springsteen, willing to. I heard a good thing about stand-up comics saying, if you're not willing to die, you're not going to be able to kill. And that applies to soldiers too. But if you think about that at an entertainment level, they say, oh man, he went on stage and he killed it. He killed them with humor. He killed them with laughter. Yeah, because he was willing to die first. He boloed, he blew it in these clubs where 5 people were there smoking cigarettes. He was willing to do that, to go through that, to kill on that stage in front of the big crowds. So if you're not willing to die, you're never going to kill. That is a very good saying. Just heard that last week and I was like, man, I got to use that. But I realized along the way, well, God doesn't use electromagnetic force because that's satanic. He's more photonic. Doesn't use the strong force. And he doesn't use gravity because gravity is death. And that means you're at the end of your life. Okay? So out of the 4 forces, which one is God really associated with? The weak force. You look at my chart, my north, south, east, west zodiac, you'll see that Adam up north is the weak force and Eve down south is the strong force. There's a reason for that. And all these people that hate me in the church, they say, oh, you're an apologetic or you're a Gnostic. Bullshit. Bullshit. I expose the Gnostics. I expose the people in the esoteric organizations that this guy calling me a Gnostic, I'll guarantee one of his Christian ministers at the very top is a secret member of a secret society. And that church probably has a bylaw saying you cannot be a member of that organization. And they are. But this guy's hating on me. That's fine. I can take it. But the weak force, you will learn along the way, is like in Monty Python's Quest for the Holy Grail. See that tree? Go cut it down with a minnow. He hands him a little fish. He says, the big ass oak tree with rough bark. Yeah, take this minnow and go cut that tree. That's the weak force. That is why you read several accounts in the Bible where people lost their religion. Why? Because they realized God's not going to hand you a vaporizing gun and kill all your enemies. Not going to happen. God's not going to hand you a neutron bomb. Okay, see that city? Go take it out. Not going to happen. God is removing all your power and leaving you with nothing and empowering all your enemies with all this EMF, gravity, and strong force energy. What are you left with? Weak force? How am I supposed to get anything done doing that? That takes years of wisdom, my friend. So at some point in your life, you get like Bruce Springsteen and you quit making excuses saying, oh, I'm not one of Trump's kids. You get off your ass and you say, okay, to be like Billy Waugh with my guts blown out, my legs not working, and guys whispering to me on the other side of the bomb crater, hey, Billy, hang in there. We're going to get you out. That is when you wake up as a man and a woman. You're no longer a kid. You're no longer a teenager. You're manning up. You're going to cowgirl up in life. And you say, okay, what can I do at my level to poke the devil right in the blankety blank eye? I'm going to be like Jason and the Argonauts, and I'm going to sharpen this log. And when Polyphemus comes in, I'm going to give it to him right in his one big ugly eye. So one day, that's what I did. I quit belly aching, moaning, complaining about my plight, and I did something about it. And people on the right and on the left hate my guts, and I don't care. I couldn't be happier. Because when you're where God put you, and you got the message in your mouth, you know you got from God. Your life's experience is all coming to fruition. You know you're in the right place. Bruce, Robbie Krieger, people yelling at him, spitting at him, saying, you suck. They're like, because they know where they've already been. You're just starting out and you're trying to become some social media it was a socialite, media, socialite, however you want to put it. You got to have a life first, my friend. What are you, 21? You got no life behind you. You got no war stories. You got no kids to bounce on the knee and say, hey, Grandpappy did some stuff in life. Let me tell you a few stories. Let me tell you a few jokes. You can't build anything. You've never done anything. You need to go out and achieve some stuff. And then when those arrows, those flaming arrows from the left and the right come in, you're like Superman. And there ain't no kryptonite. The only kryptonite is from within. It's never from without. Okay, I'll get into that another time. Part of the science behind, if you look at my temple graphic, one half of that, it represents half your brain, the northern hemisphere of the planet, southern hemisphere of the planet. It always represents the opposites. Now, there's polar opposites. That's your north, south, positive, negative. But your left and right taps into a whole different type of opposite. You can't really call them polar opposites. But when you get into why is God favoring my enemies? Because they operate off the inorganic chemistry side of things. Okay? Carbon, this is why I say we're all in the middle. And that's organic chemistry. And let's face it, we're amoebas. We can be snuffed out very easily. We're literally hanging on by the thread of God's mercy. And God chose that weak being surrounded by all this inorganic chemistry and the electrical forces and the gravitational forces. That stuff was set up long before you showed up. So that's another reason why you need to pull your head out of your rear end and quit complaining. You're like, why has God empowered all my enemies? Once you realize where you stand, you can understand all your strengths, and that the weak force is actually it's the strongest force in the universe. Look it up. I'm not a big fan of the guys in the string theory community because they screwed over a lot of people in the scientific community by sucking up all the, grant money, pissing all their friends off, taking the lion's share. Oh, I got to be greedy and get it all. Not sharing any of it. No. Because that's human nature. Who was it? John Stossel used to put the money in the bowl and blow a whistle and everyone would just grab. Instead, everyone's electing a banker and saying, okay, there's $500. There's 5 of us. We each get 100. No, you got to be greedy and see if you can get 6. And people tearing the bills and all that. So the string theory crowd tapped into a very important thing. That you're connected to those stars in the night sky. Believe it or not, there's a thin connection. Infinitely thin line to that star. It's hard to believe. Now, that might be a oversimplification of how it actually works. I'm not a physicist, but it's a good stab. I'm going to poke that devil in the eye. I don't care if you like my analogy. Go to hell. But hope you don't, but don't care. You know why? Because if you don't care, I don't care. I used to care. I don't care anymore. Pull your head out of your rear end. That's what I tell people. I didn't help you. You listened to what I said and it worked. Good for you. But anyway, I don't mean to say go to hell, but you know what I mean. Not a good thing to say. Not a good example for kids. So I realized the fatal flaw of my enemy, the chink in the enemy's armor was their number one belief. I'm going to exploit it. Just like in those movies you see where the alien spaceship has this hole and you got to send a bomb in there and it blows it up. That's the mothership and all the little aliens die. You say, that's just in movies. No, that is real. You follow military guys and they will tell you, oh yeah. You read Franklin D. Miller, I believe. Congressional Medal of Honor. Great book. Can't remember the name of the book, but look it up. One of my favorite books by a Green Beret. And he said a Viet Cong came into an A-team camp. He exploited a weakness in their fence line. It was a drainage ditch where they had the barbed wire all 6 different ways and it had rusted out. And the camp commanders are supposed to go around and have somebody check that stuff. And they kept seeing it, not doing anything about it. A guy snaked his way in, blew up all their weapons cache, hurt a lot of people, killed a bunch of people, and then took off running. And they tracked those 2 guys down. They messed with the wrong hombres. Because that's your special forces community. They don't play. But it just goes to show you, you say, oh, that's in movies in Hollywood. No, that's real. And that's why I love listening to special forces guys, Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, Air Force pararescue guys, all the hardcore guys. They will tell you that there's things you believe that are true that are false, and there are things that you think are false that are actually true. My understanding of things offends both the church and the Luciferian Satanists. And I couldn't be happier. It doesn't bother me one bit. You can call me whatever you want. You will not find anybody anywhere that has ever said publicly, hydrogen is Lucifer. Jesus associates with carbon, is more connected nowadays with fluorine and helium and neodymium, and is not connected to hydrogen other than the fact that it controls. It tells hydrogen what to do. Hydrogen is Jesus's little bitch. And the Satanists shoot blood out of their eyes and say, how did this guy figure this out? Out of 25 people I told about this work, I explained all the graphics I have hanging on my walls behind you. You can't see them. My temple graphic. And I said to one person, my younger sister, she's an accountant. I said, She goes, what is all this? And I said, well, this equals this, and that equals that. I said, Edward Leedskalnin's castle, when you mirror image it, you get this. One day I looked and I said, I wonder if that works for the periodic table. I did the same thing and I went, what am I looking at? That's Solomon's Temple. There's the well at Bahurim. There's the Valley of Ajalon, where Joshua stopped the sun and the sun here and the moon somewhere else. We get into it in a different video. I go, the whole Bible narrative is contained, frozen in time in that graphic. And my sister looked dead in the eye and she said, holy mackerel. How did you figure this out? She's the only one. The lights came on in that girl's head and she went, boom! Everyone else is like, what are you saying? I don't get it. And I'm like, you don't get that a double mirror image of the periodic table is Solomon's Temple? And the magnitude of that statement? You're not getting that? I would have a cognitive test done if I were you. That led me to looking at things and going, hey, wait a minute. Hydrogen, it cannot possibly be the first element. There's more going on here. And that's where this book came in. And I noticed when I looked at the periodic table in that book, here's one I haven't written all over. I bought two of them. If you notice in this book, hydrogen is here and hydrogen is also right here, right next to helium. And I could tell you a story for half an hour on how I came into contact with that book. That is a whole story in and of itself. But I said, I've never seen a periodic table with two hydrogens. What's going on here? Just like when God spoke to Moses in the bush that burned but was not consumed. Moses went, I gotta look into this. What is going on here? That's what I said. And I kept reading page after page. You look at the outlines on this book. Look at the scribbles. Okay? And every book I own looks like this. It's got all little notes in there. You know what those are? That's the sign of somebody who's either really nuts and they're just scribbling on their prison walls, or they have a message. You see a book like that, you say, this guy's up to something. And the church don't like it because I'm going to make a lot of guys get off their ass and do their job. The church ain't liking me right now. And they got a lot of splaining to do. Because this goes back to, I kept reverse engineering. Wait a minute. How did the church get deceived into believing the XY axis of today, positive X, positive Y, negative Y, was created by Rene Descartes? When in fact, all it is a glorified zodiac. They did that to everything. They did that to the element hydrogen. Why does that book have two hydrogens? It doesn't. It has three. They didn't put the third one in there because you'd figure out the 3 is over the lithium, the 6 is over carbon, and the 9 is over fluorine, where you saw it in that picture. And you'll make the connection. Hey, wait a minute. Didn't Nikola Tesla say something about 369? And you'll start connecting the dots. They don't want that. They don't want you asking questions. They want you stupid sheeple putting in 30, 40 years of your life, working your fingers to the bone, not collecting one Social Security check, and then kicking the bucket because they've already spent that money. Once you Satanists and you church people realize the people you think are your buddies have already spent your grandchildren's grandchildren's money. They're not your buddies. Once the lights turn on that, hey, I don't have any friends in this world. I'm Han Solo, bro. That book got me researching, hey, what's up with hydrogen? And that book is one of the only places you'll ever see someone talking about how when they realized what hydrogen was, they didn't know where to put it in the periodic order. They got really confused because they're like, well, it's kind of like lithium, and it's kind of like it has attributes of lithium, carbon, and fluorine. Why is that? Because it's the 1-0 of binary code. It goes all the way back. You trace it all the way back to the beginning. The first binary system. God versus the devil. Adam versus the wife fighting with Adam. You could say Morse code falls in there, but... So once I started reverse engineering things, it all led back to the 1800s, the cradle of technological advancement. Turn of the century, 1800s, 1900s. All the stuff we have today, all they are glorified versions of what they figured out back then. And a lot of the tech advancements of the 1800s were squashed. When the guy that figured it out died, they bought up his stuff and got rid of it. They don't ever want you to know the secret behind, like I was telling you in a different video, the steam hammer effect. They don't understand how you can get more energy out of a steam hammer system than you've put into it. And there's a guy making water heaters for commercial buildings. Based on that, he was a steam fitter and a steam fitting engineer. And he took that process and made money off it. Once you learn how to reverse engineer things, you're like, wait a minute, this goes back to a very specific, what I call one of the pinch points in time. Where they crept in from the old world with their pagan ideas and pagan beliefs, and they carried them over, and then they, with technology, all your church leaders were told, here, look at this. This is Jesus and Lucifer. They're the same guy. And those dummies were like, oh, okay, sounds good to me. What makes me so sure? Because they didn't have the internet and all the bells and whistles that we have right now. These things were brand new ideas. So they really didn't have much to go on. They didn't have a leg to stand on to argue from. Time has to proceed forward before you see the flaws in the system. It's called give them enough rope, and eventually those Satanists, they hang themselves with their own science. So I realized poking Polyphemus right in his eye, I had to do it with their own science, which is their false science, because they never gave you a platform and a voice to counter what the claims they were making. And that shit ends today. It ends today for the church, because the church has to make a decision. Hey, is this guy Snap Publishing? Is he right? Is Lucifer hydrogen? What does this do to the concept of God? Does this mean God doesn't exist? I never said that. They'll say I said that. I believe in the multi-layered onion, and yes, God is definitely real. In my belief, you will never convince me otherwise. But God separated themselves so far from us because they were going to kill us. So they had to get away. I don't blame them. I would have done the same thing. That's why Sasquatch, if Sasquatch is out there, shout out to you, Sasquatch. I wouldn't blame you for hiding. Merman, mermaids, mermen, merpeople. I don't blame you. Don't knock on those nuclear subs. It's full of assholes. But anyway, so we're going to leave that right there. And we'll make a part 2 to this. I got more to say. So thanks for tuning in. All right, well, thanks for tuning in. And don't forget to hit the like button and share And check us out in the links down below. Have a good day.